The auction house smelled like old money and older secrets, and Natalie Zhou was about to throw up on both. She stood in the back corner of the gilded room, clutching her numbered paddle like it might save her from drowning in champagne bubbles and designer perfume. Her vintage thrift store dress, the nicest thing she owned, suddenly felt like tissue paper among all the silk and diamonds. She was here because her grandmother had sent her, pressed the paddle into her hands with shaking fingers, and whispered that Lot 47 mattered more than anything. Natalie taught elementary school art classes. She made $38,000 a year. She had no business being here. The auctioneer's voice rang through the space, crisp and efficient. Natalie watched number after number sail past, watched paddles rise with casual flicks of manicured hands, watched fortunes change owners like trading baseball cards. Her stomach twisted tighter with each passing lot. Then 47 came up. A painting, small and dark, Renaissance era according to the catalog. The Virgin Mary holding her child, both faces turned toward an unseen light. Natalie's grandmother had cried when she showed her the listing. Said it belonged to their family once, generations ago, before they lost everything fleeing the war. Opening bid $50,000, the auctioneer announced. Natalie's hand shook as she raised her paddle. She had exactly $52,000 in her account, every penny she had saved in 6 years of teaching, every birthday check from relatives, every summer job paycheck. $50,000 to paddle 219. Do I hear 60? Another paddle rose, smooth and confident. A man in the middle rose, his back to her. 60,000. Do I hear 70? Natalie's paddle went up, her heart hammered against her ribs. 70,000 to 219. The man's paddle rose again without hesitation. 80,000. Natalie couldn't, she physically could not. The room spun slightly. She lowered her paddle, felt tears burn behind her eyes, and turned to leave before she embarrassed herself by crying in front of people who spent her yearly salary on shoes. She made it to the lobby before the sobs came, pressing her palms against the cool marble wall and trying to breathe. Her grandmother would be devastated. That painting was the last piece of home, the last connection to everything their family had been. "Excuse me." The voice was deep, curious. Natalie wiped her eyes roughly and turned. The man from the auction stood there, tall and broad-shouldered, dark hair slightly messed like he'd been running his hands through it. His suit probably cost more than her car. He held the painting, wrapped in brown paper and twine. "You wanted this," he said, "not a question. I can't afford it." Her voice came out thick with tears. "Congratulations on your purchase." He studied her face with unusual intensity, his dark eyes searching. "Why did you want it? That's not your concern. Humor me." Natalie almost walked away, should have walked away, but something in his expression stopped her, something genuine beneath all that expensive grooming. "It belonged to my family," she said quietly. "A long time ago. My grandmother recognized it from stories her mother told her. We lost everything in the war, came here with nothing. That painting is the only piece of our history that still exists somewhere in the world, was the only piece. Now it's yours." He looked down at the wrapped painting, then back at her. "What's your name?" "Natalie Zhou." "Xavier Donnelly." He held out the painting. "Take it." She stared at him. "What?" "Take it, it's yours." "I can't pay you $80,000. I'm not asking you to." His voice was firm, certain. "If it belongs to your family, it belongs to your family. Take it." Natalie's hands trembled as she reached for the painting, but she stopped herself. "Why would you do this? You don't know me. This is insane." "Is it insane to return something to its rightful owner?" Xavier shifted his weight, looking almost uncomfortable. "I buy a lot of art. One more painting won't change my life, but that clearly matters to you. You spent $80,000. I spend more than that on things that matter less. He pressed the painting into her hands before she could protest further. Give your grandmother my regards. He walked away before Natalie could form words, disappearing into the crowd filtering out of the auction house. She stood there holding a piece of her history, wrapped in paper and impossible kindness, and had no idea what had just happened. That night, she sat at her grandmother's kitchen table, watching the old woman cry over the painting. They unwrapped it together, and in the lower right corner, barely visible, were initials that matched their family name in its original form. Who was he? Her grandmother asked. This man who gave us back our heart. I don't know, Natalie said honestly. A stranger at an auction. But she couldn't stop thinking about him, about the certainty in his voice, the way he'd looked at the painting like it was nothing and at her like she was something. She Googled his name the next morning over coffee in her tiny apartment. Xavier Donnelly. Billionaire. CEO of Donnelly Industries, a manufacturing empire his great-grandfather had built. 32 years old. Featured in Forbes, Wall Street Journal, every business publication that mattered. Photos of him at charity galas, corporate events, always alone despite the beautiful women who seemed to orbit him in every picture. A billionaire had given her an $80,000 painting because she'd been crying in a lobby. Natalie closed her laptop and tried to forget about him. Their worlds were impossibly far apart. It was a kind gesture from someone who could afford kind gestures. Nothing more. 3 days later, flowers arrived at her school. 24 roses, deep red and thornless, with a card that said simply, "I hope your grandmother liked it. XD." Her fellow teachers gathered around, cooing and asking questions. Natalie had no answers. She called the florist, who politely refused to provide the sender's information beyond confirming the initials matched the card. She kept the card. Pressed it between the pages of her favorite book like a teenager with a crush. A week passed. Natalie threw herself into teaching, into finger painting with second graders and explaining color theory to fifth graders who mostly wanted to draw superheroes. Her life was busy and full, and had no room for billionaires who did impossible things. Then she saw him at the grocery store. She was in yoga pants and an old college sweatshirt, hair piled on top of her head, no makeup, debating between pasta brands because 50 cents mattered on her budget. He stood 3 feet away in the same aisle, wearing jeans and a plain black shirt, looking remarkably normal except for the watch on his wrist that probably cost more than her apartment. Their eyes met. His face broke into a smile that transformed him from intimidating to almost boyish. "Natalie Zhou," he said, "Xavier Donnelly." She clutched her pasta box. Do billionaires grocery shop? Even billionaires need food. He gestured at his basket, which contained protein powder, chicken breasts, and vegetables. Though I'll admit this is new for me. I'm trying to be more self-sufficient. How's that going? I bought salt instead of sugar last week, ruined a perfectly good cup of coffee. She laughed before she could stop herself. That's impressive incompetence. I have many skills. Grocery shopping isn't one of them. He paused. Did your grandmother like the painting? She cried for an hour. In a good way. Natalie met his eyes. Thank you. I still don't understand why you did it, but thank you. Maybe I could explain over dinner. The words hung between them. Natalie's heart did something complicated in her chest. I don't think that's a good idea, she said slowly. Why not? Because you're you and I'm me, and those worlds don't mix. Xavier's expression shifted, something almost hurt flickering across his face. You don't know anything about my world. I know enough. I saw the Google results. Then you saw what everyone sees, not who I am. He stepped closer, and Natalie caught the scent of his cologne, something subtle and woodsy. One dinner. If you hate it, you never have to see me again. but I'd like the chance to know the woman who cried over a painting." Every logical part of Natalie's brain screamed no. This was ridiculous. He was a billionaire CEO and she was a public school teacher. They had nothing in common. This would end badly, but she thought about how he'd given her the painting without hesitation. How he'd looked at her grandmother's story with respect instead of dismissal. How he was standing in a grocery store looking genuinely hopeful that she'd say yes. One dinner, she heard herself say, his smile could have lit the entire city. They went to a small Italian restaurant in her neighborhood, not the 5-star places she'd seen in his Google results. Xavier showed up in slacks and a button-down, still too polished for the vinyl booths and checkered tablecloths, but trying. They sat across from each other, and Natalie waited for the awkwardness to settle in. Instead, they talked for 3 hours. Xavier told her about growing up with expectations crushing down on his shoulders, about business school when he'd wanted to study architecture, about taking over the company at 25 when his father had a stroke, about board meetings and profit margins and the weight of 10,000 employees depending on his decisions. "Everyone thinks money solves everything," he said, twirling pasta on his fork. "It solves some things, but it doesn't make you happy. It doesn't give you purpose. I spend my days making rich people richer and wondering what the point is." Natalie told him about her students, about teaching kids from neighborhoods where art supplies were luxuries, about buying crayons and paper with her own money because the school budget was a joke, about her parents who'd wanted her to be a doctor or lawyer and barely spoke to her after she chose teaching. "They think I wasted my potential," she said. "Maybe they're right. I'll never own a house or retire comfortably. But when a kid who's never held a paintbrush creates something beautiful, that matters. That means something." Xavier looked at her like she'd said something profound instead of obvious. "You're right. That matters more than anything I do. You employ 10,000 people. That matters. I shuffle money around. You change lives. Why do you do it then? If you hate it so much," he was quiet for a long moment. "Because it's what I'm supposed to do. What I was born to do, and I'm good at it even if it doesn't fulfill me. Someone has to run the company, might as well be me." Natalie reached across the table without thinking, covered his hand with hers. "That sounds lonely." His fingers curled around hers, warm and solid. "It is." They stayed until the restaurant closed, talking until the owner started stacking chairs. Xavier walked her to her car, a 10-year-old Honda that sputtered when it started. He didn't comment on it, just opened her door and asked if he could see her again. "Yes," Natalie said, and meant it. They fell into a pattern over the next month. Dinner twice a week, always at small neighborhood places where Xavier could blend in, and Natalie could afford to split the check, though he fought her on it every time. He started showing up at her school during lunch, sitting on the steps outside her classroom with sandwiches from the deli down the street. Her students would peek through the windows and giggle, and Natalie would roll her eyes but feel warmth spreading through her chest. He was different than she'd expected. Funny and self-deprecating, curious about everything, asking her questions about art and teaching like she was an expert in something that mattered. He talked about business sometimes, but mostly he wanted to hear about her day, her students, her dreams. "I want to open an after-school art program," she told him one evening, walking through the park near her apartment. "For kids who can't afford private lessons, give them a space to create, to express themselves. Art saved me when I was young. I want to give that to other kids. Why haven't you?" "Money, space, time, all the usual obstacles." She kicked at a pebble. "It's just a dream." Xavier was quiet and Natalie glanced at him. He had that thinking expression, the one that meant his brain was working through problems and solutions at lightning speed. "Don't," she said. "Don't what?" Whatever you're thinking, I can see it on your face. You want to throw money at this. Would that be so bad? Yes. She stopped walking, turned to face him. Xavier, I like you, I really like you, but I need you to understand something. I don't want your money. I don't want you to fix my problems or fund my dreams or make my life easier with your checkbook. That's not why I'm here. Then, why are you here? The question hung between them, heavy with meaning. They'd been dancing around it for weeks, this thing growing between them that neither had named. Because you make me laugh, Natalie said quietly. Because you listen when I talk. Because when you look at me, I feel like you actually see me, not just another person in your life. Because despite all the ways we're different, we fit somehow. Xavier stepped closer, his hand coming up to cup her face. You're the first real thing in my life in years. Everyone wants something from me. Money, connections, status. You wanted a painting for your grandmother, not for yourself, for family, for love. Do you know how rare that is in my world? I'm not in your world. Maybe that's why I'm falling for you. He kissed her then, gentle and careful, like she was something precious. Natalie's hands found his shoulders, and she kissed him back, tasting hope and possibility and the terrifying thrill of jumping without knowing where she'd land. When they pulled apart, she was breathless. This is complicated. Most good things are. I'm serious, Xavier. Your life, my life, they're so different. I don't know how this works. We figure it out together. His thumb traced her cheekbone. If you want to, if this is what you want. Natalie thought about all the reasons to say no. Thought about the inevitable complications, the clash of lifestyles, the scrutiny that would come if anyone found out he was dating a public school teacher. Thought about how this could end in heartbreak. But she looked at him, really looked at him, and saw someone who was just as scared and just as hopeful as she was. Yes, she said. This is what I want. Dating a billionaire was stranger than Natalie had imagined. Xavier tried to keep things normal, to exist in her world rather than pull her into his, but reality kept intruding. Photographers caught them leaving a movie theater, and suddenly, her face was on gossip websites with headlines speculating about Xavier Donnelly's mystery woman. Her principal called her into his office, concerned about the attention. Her parents called for the first time in months, suddenly interested in her life now that she was dating someone successful. This is awful, she told Xavier, sitting in his penthouse apartment for the first time because going to her place meant dealing with paparazzi in her building's lobby. I feel like I'm in a fishbowl. I'm sorry. He looked genuinely distressed. I can have my PR team shut some of it down. That's not the point. The point is that we can't just exist. Everything is complicated. Do you want to stop? His voice was careful, controlled, but she could hear the fear underneath. No. She moved closer to him on the absurdly expensive couch. But I'm scared. This is all so much bigger than me. You're not small, Natalie. You're the most substantial person I know. Xavier pulled her against him, and she tucked herself into his side, breathing in his familiar scent. You changed my life. Before you, I was going through the motions. Work, charity events, board meetings, repeat. I didn't know I was miserable until I met someone who actually loved what they did. I complain about teaching constantly. But you love it. I can see it in your face when you talk about your students. That passion, that purpose, I'd never felt that until recently. Natalie looked up at him. What changed? I started thinking about what you said, about what matters. I've been looking at the company differently, at what we could do beyond just making money. We manufacture components for about a dozen different industries. I've been researching which ones actually help people. Medical equipment, educational technology, infrastructure. I want to shift our focus there. That sounds amazing. My board thinks I'm losing my mind. Profit margins are better in luxury goods and defense contracts. He smiled, but there was tension in it. But I realized I don't care. I have more money than I could spend in 10 lifetimes. Why not use the company to actually do some good? Natalie's heart swelled. When did you become even more perfect? I'm not perfect. I'm figuring it out. Because of you. She kissed him then, deep and meaningful, trying to pour everything she felt into the connection between them. Xavier responded with intensity, his hands tangling in her hair, and for a while they forgot about everything outside the bubble they'd created. Later, lying tangled together on his couch, Natalie felt something shift inside her. This was real. This was serious. This was the kind of love that changed everything. I love you, she whispered into the quiet. Xavier's arms tightened around her. I love you too, so much it terrifies me. Good, I'd hate to be the only one scared, he laughed, the sound rumbling through his chest. We're quite a pair. 3 months into their relationship, Xavier invited her to a charity gala. It was the first public event they'd attend together, the first time she'd step fully into his world. Natalie wanted to say no, but she saw how much it mattered to him, how he wanted her by his side. She bought a dress she couldn't afford from a department store, used YouTube tutorials to figure out formal makeup, and felt like an imposter the entire time she was getting ready. Xavier picked her up in a town car, looking devastating in a tuxedo, and his face when he saw her made every penny worth it. You're stunning, he said, helping her into the car. I'm terrified. Don't be, just be yourself. He squeezed her hand. That's all I need. The gala was overwhelming. Crystal chandeliers and designer gowns and more wealth concentrated in one room than Natalie had seen in her entire life. She recognized faces from magazines and news broadcasts. Everyone stared at her, curiosity and speculation in their eyes. Xavier never left her side. He introduced her with pride, his hand steady on her lower back, deflecting invasive questions with practiced ease. When people asked what she did, he'd say, Natalie teaches art to elementary students, like it was the most impressive career in the room, but the whispers still reached her. She's pretty but so ordinary. What does he see in her? How long until he gets bored? Natalie excused herself to the bathroom, needing a moment to breathe. She stood at the sink, gripping the marble counter, telling herself she was strong enough for this. Another woman entered, stunning in a silver gown that probably cost more than Natalie's yearly salary. You're Xavier's date, she said, not a question. Yes. I'm Victoria Ashford. Xavier and I dated a few years ago. She reapplied her lipstick with practiced precision. You seem nice. That's why I'm giving you advice. This won't work. You're not built for his world. Eventually, he'll realize that and move on to someone more suitable. Save yourself the heartbreak and end it now. Natalie met her eyes in the mirror. Did it hurt when he left you? Victoria's expression flickered. Excuse me. You're telling me to leave him alone because you're concerned about me, but really you're still bitter that he chose to end things. I get it. He's an incredible man, but he's with me now and I'm not going anywhere. She walked out before Victoria could respond, heart pounding, hands shaking. She found Xavier talking with a group of older men in tuxedos, business discussions happening in the middle of a party. When he saw her face, he immediately excused himself. What happened? Nothing. Just reality checking in. She forced a smile. I'm okay. You're not. He pulled her into a quiet corner away from the crowd. Talk to me. So she told him about Victoria, about the whispers, about feeling like she was drowning in a world she'd never understand. Xavier's expression darkened with anger. Victoria is bitter and wrong, and anyone who whispers about you isn't worth our time. He cupped her face in his hands. I know this is hard. I know my life comes with complications you never asked for. But Natalie, you are not ordinary. You are extraordinary in every way that matters. You have more substance in your little finger than everyone in this room combined. I don't fit here, neither do I. Not really, I never have. His eyes searched hers desperately. But with you, I feel like I fit somewhere. Like I finally have a place I belong. Please don't let these people take that away from us. Natalie felt tears threatening. I'm not good at this. The fancy events, the scrutiny, playing the part of a billionaire's girlfriend. Then don't play a part, just be you. That's all I've ever wanted. She kissed him there in the corner, not caring who saw, pouring every ounce of love and fear and determination into it. When they pulled apart, Xavier was smiling. Let's get out of here, he said. You can't leave your own charity gala. Watch me. They snuck out a side entrance, laughing like teenagers, and ended up at a 24-hour diner still in their formal wear. The waitress stared at them, but Xavier ordered pancakes like it was the most normal thing in the world. They sat in a booth and talked until dawn, and Natalie fell even more in love with the man who'd choose her over obligation every single time. The scrutiny didn't stop. If anything, it intensified. But they learned to navigate it together. Xavier hired security to keep paparazzi away from her school. Natalie learned to ignore gossip websites and social media commentary. They built a life that existed in the spaces between their worlds, finding balance in each other. Xavier started spending more time at her apartment, cooking dinner in her tiny kitchen and helping her grade papers at her rickety table. Natalie attended necessary events with him, but never let them define their relationship. They were just two people in love, trying to make it work against the odds. 6 months in, Xavier showed up at her school on a Tuesday afternoon with an envelope. Natalie was cleaning up her classroom, covered in paint and glitter, when he walked in. You have paint in your hair, he said, grinning. Occupational hazard. What's that? He handed her the envelope. Inside were keys and an address. I found a space, he said carefully, for your after-school art program. It's in a good neighborhood, close to 3 different elementary schools, plenty of room for classes. The rent is paid for the first year. Natalie stared at the keys. Xavier, before you argue, let me explain. This isn't about throwing money at your problems. This is an investment in something I believe in. You want to help kids through art. I want to help you do that. Not because you need saving, but because your dream deserves a chance to exist. I told you I didn't want your money. This isn't about money. It's about partnership. You run the program, teach the classes, make all the decisions. I just removed one obstacle. He stepped closer. Let me be part of this. Let me support what you love. Isn't that what people who love each other do? Natalie felt tears spilling over. You're impossible. Is that a yes? That's a yes. She launched herself at him and he caught her, spinning her around despite the paint smeared on her clothes. When he set her down, she kissed him with everything she had. They spent the next month setting up the space together. Xavier, who'd never painted anything in his life, helped her organize supplies and assemble easels. They painted walls together, cleaned floors, hung artwork from her students. He wore old jeans and got paint all over himself and laughed when she took pictures of him looking completely out of his element. My board would have a heart attack if they saw me right now, he said, covered in blue paint. Good, let them. The program launched in September, offering free after-school art classes to underprivileged kids. 30 students showed up the first week. By October, they had a waiting list. Natalie taught 3 days a week after her regular job, exhausted and exhilarated, and Xavier would show up with dinner and help clean up afterwards. He started bringing colleagues by, showing them what real impact looked like. Some donated money, others volunteered time. Xavier's company started a partnership with the program, providing supplies and funding scholarships. The board still thought he was crazy, but the positive press and employee morale boost shut them up. "You've changed everything," Natalie told him one evening, watching their students' artwork dry on clotheslines strung across the room. "We changed everything," Xavier corrected. "You gave me purpose. I'm just trying to keep up." In November, Xavier took her to meet his mother. They drove upstate to the family estate, and Natalie tried not to hyperventilate at the literal mansion they pulled up to. His mother, Xavier Donnelly, was elegant and intimidating in pearls and a perfectly pressed dress. "So you're the teacher," she said, looking Natalie up and down. "Yes, madam." "My son talks about you constantly. It's exhausting." But there was warmth in her eyes. "He's different now, happier. I assume that's your doing." "We make each other happy," Natalie said carefully. Xavier studied her for a long moment, then smiled. "Good. Money and status mean nothing if you're miserable. Xavier's father never understood that, but I think you do." They spent the weekend there, and Xavier showed Natalie photo albums of Xavier as a child, told stories about a boy who'd wanted to build things and create beauty, but had been pushed into business instead. Natalie watched Xavier squirm with embarrassment and loved him even more for the vulnerability he showed. "She approves," Xavier said on the drive home. "How do you know?" "She only brings out the photo albums for people she thinks will stick around." Natalie's heart did that complicated thing again. "Do you think I'll stick around?" Xavier pulled the car over to the side of the road, put it in park, and turned to face her. "I think I want you to stick around forever. I think I want to wake up next to you every morning and fall asleep holding you every night. I think I want to build a life with you, support your dreams while you support mine, and figure out how to balance our completely different worlds into something that's just ours." "Xavier, I'm not proposing, not yet, but I'm telling you where my head is, where my heart is." He took her hand, threaded their fingers together. "I love you, Natalie Zhou, more than I thought it was possible to love another person." She was crying, couldn't seem to stop. "I love you too, so much. Then we'll figure out the rest together." By December, they'd settled into something that felt like permanence. Natalie had clothes at his penthouse, he had a key to her apartment. They talked about the future openly, made plans that extended years ahead. Xavier started therapy to deal with the pressure he'd been under his entire life. Natalie started taking business classes to better understand his world and manage the growing art program. They balanced each other. His wealth opened doors for her dreams. Her passion gave his life meaning. His logical approach grounded her creative chaos. Her emotional intelligence helped him navigate relationships he'd always struggled with. Where one was weak, the other was strong. Where one doubted, the other believed. On Christmas Eve, they went to visit her grandmother. The painting hung in the old woman's living room, and she told Xavier stories about their family, about history and resilience and love that survived wars and oceans and time. "You gave us more than a painting," she told him. "You gave us hope. And you love our Natalie the way she deserves to be loved." Xavier squeezed Natalie's hand under the table. "She makes it easy." That night back at his penthouse, they stood by the floor-to-ceiling windows watching snow fall over the city. Natalie leaned against him, content and warm. "This has been the best year of my life," she said. "Mine too." Xavier turned her to face him, and she saw something nervous and hopeful in his expression. "I said I wouldn't propose yet, but I'm bad at waiting for things I want." He pulled a small box from his pocket. Natalie's breath caught. "I don't have a speech prepared. I'm terrible at this." He opened the box, revealing a simple ring with a single diamond. "But I know I want forever with you. I know that before you, I was just existing, and now I'm actually living. I know we're polar opposites in almost every way, but somehow that makes us perfect together. You balance me, Natalie. You make me better. You make me want to be better. Xavier, marry me, please." Let me spend the rest of my life supporting your dreams and being your partner and loving you the way you deserve." Natalie was definitely crying now, tears streaming down her face. "Yes, God, yes." He slipped the ring on her finger with shaking hands, and she kissed him like her life depended on it. They held each other in front of the windows, snow falling outside, and Natalie marveled at how her life had changed because she'd cried at an auction. They got married in the spring, small ceremony in her grandmother's backyard. No media circus, no society pages, just family and friends and love. Xavier wore a suit, Natalie wore her mother's wedding dress altered to fit, and they promised forever under apple blossoms while her students threw flower petals. Eleanor cried. Natalie's grandmother cried. Natalie cried. Even Xavier's eyes were suspiciously bright when he said "I do." At the reception, dancing in the grass to music from a single guitar, Xavier whispered in her ear, "Thank you for taking a chance on me." "Thank you for seeing me," Natalie whispered back. They honeymooned in Italy, visiting museums and eating gelato and making love in hotel rooms overlooking ancient cities. Xavier sketched buildings in a notebook he'd brought, rediscovering the creativity he'd abandoned. Natalie took photographs, capturing moments of joy and peace. When they returned, they bought a house together. Not a mansion, not his penthouse, but something in between. Space for an art studio and a home office. A yard for the children they both wanted. A kitchen where they could cook together and argue about who made better pasta. The art program expanded to 3 locations. Xavier's company shifted focus to educational technology and medical equipment, and profits actually increased when employees rallied behind a mission they believed in. Natalie cut back to teaching part-time, splitting her energy between the school and the program. They learned each other's rhythms, how to fight fair, how to apologize, how to be partners in every sense of the word. Xavier learned to relax, to not carry the weight of the world on his shoulders, to find joy in small moments. Natalie learned to accept help, to recognize that support wasn't the same as being saved, to let herself be loved completely. 2 years after they married, their daughter was born. They named her Eleanor Marie after both grandmothers, and she had Xavier's dark eyes and Natalie's smile. Xavier cried when he held her for the first time, this billionaire CEO reduced to tears by 7 pounds of perfect human. "We made a person," he said, wonder in his voice. "We did." Natalie watched him cradle their daughter with infinite gentleness. "You're going to be an amazing father." "I'm terrified." "Good. That means you'll try hard." They raised Eleanor with love and intention, teaching her about art and business, compassion and strength, the value of money and the importance of purpose beyond wealth. She grew up in both worlds, comfortable in boardrooms and art studios, privileged but aware of her privilege. When she was 3, her brother Benjamin arrived, loud and energetic where she was quiet and thoughtful. Xavier adapted the company schedule so he could be home for dinner every night. Natalie organized her teaching and program duties around school schedules. They built a life that prioritized family without sacrificing dreams. On their 5th anniversary, lying in bed after the kids were asleep, Natalie traced patterns on Xavier's chest. "You ever regret it?" she asked. "Marrying someone so different from you, someone who complicated your life?" Xavier caught her hand, brought it to his lips. "Every day I wake up grateful that you cried at that auction, that I had the courage to talk to you, that you gave me a chance despite every logical reason not to. I'm serious. So am I." He rolled to face her, his expression intense. "Before you I had everything and nothing. Money, success, status, all empty. You gave me purpose, love, a real life, not just an existence. You're the best decision I ever made." Even when I'm covered in paint and glitter and our kids are screaming, especially then. He kissed her softly. You balance me, remember. I'm the structured one, you're the creative one. I'm the logical one, you're the emotional one. I'm the billionaire, you're the teacher. We're polar opposites and we're perfect together. Natalie smiled against his lips. Yeah, we really are. I love you, Natalie Donnelly. I love you too, Xavier. Forever. Outside their bedroom, snow began to fall again, blanketing the world in quiet white. Inside, they held each other close, two people who shouldn't have worked but did, who balanced each other's extremes into something beautiful and lasting. A billionaire who found purpose through love. A teacher who found love through purpose. Polar opposites who created perfect equilibrium, exactly as they were always meant to. Their story wasn't about wealth or status or overcoming impossible odds. It was simpler and more profound than that. It was about two people seeing each other truly, loving each other completely, and choosing each other every single day. It was about balance found in unexpected places, about hearts that recognized their missing piece even when logic said it couldn't exist. And in the end, that was everything.